Right. Listeners are the components executed background to servlet objects. Executed background to servlet objects and which respond to the events performed on servlet objects. Events means some actions indirectly. Events means some actions. Listeners are the components executed background to servlet objects. Right. So servlet objects diagram is with us already. Hope URL rewrite, I think. Check it out. I'm looking for objects. In objects, I copied this. Objects. This is right. Already know these objects. Now somewhere the listener is added. Where the listeners are added means like this. Listeners especially added to 3 locations. One is servlet context. One listener is added to servlet context. One listener is added to servlet request. One listener is added to HTTP session. So total 3 listeners will be there. This is servlet context listener. This is nothing but servlet request listener. HTTP session listener. HTTP session listener. Now, why the listeners are available in these 3 locations means in the three objects, we are adding attributes. You can see there, we are adding attributes. Whenever we add attribute, we remove attribute. If not, the servlet context object created, servlet request object created, servlet HTTP session object created. After usage, they'll be destroyed. They are all comes under actions. When these actions are performed, automatically listeners will be running. That one I made a statement under note here. When event is performed on servlet object, delegated to listener, means moved to listener or sent to listener, delegated to listener, and the listener will execute related method to handle the event. The process we call it as event delegation model. The process we call it as event delegation model, like this. So in the diagrammatical form here, this is one source object. This is one source object. Source object means a servlet object indirectly. The object can be servlet context, servlet request, HTTP session. So these are the source objects. Source objects means where actions are performed on these objects. Now, when the action is performed on the source object, this only we call it as event. By terminology, we call it as event. Now, the event is delegated, means given to one listener. In the background, we had listener. One listener will take that event. It's called delegated or delegation. Delegated to listener. Now the listeners will organize some methods. The listeners will have some methods. The listeners will have some methods. Some methods are available. Some methods are available. So this is event delegation model. Event delegation model. And now basically to be remembered, how many listeners are there means you can remember servlet context listener, servlet request listener, HTTP session listener. These three listeners, you have to remember it. This process we are calling it as event delegation process. By terminology, we can say event delegation. This is event delegation. The methods will be running in the background. So only on the three objects we can add listeners, right? Small nodes on that listeners indirectly, each one small nodes and small program. Right, look here. Now, if you see the nodes here now, here I'll paste the diagram. We have listeners to the following servlet objects, or we can have listeners to the following servlet objects. One is context, one is request, one is HTTP session. So if it is servlet context, here servlet context event. If it is event listener, servlet context listener. Actually, the servlet context listener will have two methods: context initialized, context destroyed. Means when this object is created, this listener means when this object is created, this listener automatically runs one method known as context initialized. When the context is destroyed, automatically it executes one method known as context destroyed. What is this servlet context event? Means category. That event comes under which category? We call it as servlet context event. It's called event class. The servlet context event is the parameter to these methods to accept the event. The same way, servlet request. Here, servlet request event, servlet request listener will be there. Servlet request listener will have two methods: request initialized, request destroyed. Request initialized, request destroyed. This servlet request event is the parameter. If we take HTTP session event will be there. HTTP session listener will be there. HTTP session listener will have two methods: session created, session destroyed. Session created, session destroyed. Now, based on these three listeners, we are running a program. Okay, right. Observe it. Old program, we had a session track. HTTP session track is there. For that HTTP session track, we are adding the listeners and we are running. You have to observe it. I'll open HTTP session in session tracking. I'll open. Observe it. How I am adding the listeners. So all your programs done. This one servlet. I updated the nodes now by Saturday. How many are there? 10 in servlet. See that? I'm going with HTTP session. HTTP session. HTTP session. Right. I'll run this program. HTTP session old program I am running. Run as run on server. Click on finish. View profile and log out. Just I shown the same session available roughly. Okay, right. Now for this program, I'm adding the listener, right? For each program, I'll add the listener. So to understand the listeners, actually, the project should be under your control. Then only you can understand listeners. So listeners, you cannot understand bit properly because listener will be running in the background generally. So hope this program you typed, hope you understood existing program because already diagram is there for session. So in this diagram, session diagram, this is session. What is the first object created in the servlet context? Sorry. What is the first object created in the servlet application now? Servlet context. Servlet context. Now I'll add one listener to context. I'll add one listener. When the application deployed, automatically context object created. I made a notes to you. And the context object will hold server information, right? Okay. I'll add one listener to it. Now, whenever this context object created, automatically listener will run one method. Okay, right. Let us see. Now, I am creating listener for context actually. So we can call it as context listener. I can call it. I'm adding for context listener. I'm taking context listener. I'm taking one program under this HTTP session. I'm adding one listener program here. Right click contest. New class. Context listener. Context listener. I'm taking. Right. Now this context listener import java dot util java x dot servlet, and this program implements from servlet context listener. That is a way of writing listener. You must implement from listener. That is a rule actually. I want to see that listener once. Servlet listener. It will have two methods. Any spelling mistake? Right. See that. Servlet context listener will have two methods: context initialized, context destroyed. So the two methods you have to construct the body. These two methods you have to construct the body. Like this. Here one message. System dot out dot println context object initialized. One message. System dot out dot println context object destroyed. Context object destroyed, context object initialized. Now, when the servlet context object created, the first method will run automatically. Message will come onto the console. Just for information purpose. Whenever the application removed from your Tomcat server, then that program will run, that method will run context object destroyed. So this is your way of writing listener. Once you said implements from servlet context, automatically the context will be running. But how it will run? It should be identified by one annotation. Java X dot servlet dot annotation @ web listener. You must write what now? @ web listener is the annotation to identify this context. So automatically the context is added with the listener. Now add the listener for the servlet request, because in this diagram whenever the servlet context object creation completed, through login.html, control will go to login servlet. When the control goes to login servlet related objects are created: config, request, response, and so on. There one request object is created. Here one request object is created. Request object. In that request object, we had uname and password. So now let us add the listener for the request. Not only request listener. We are going for the request listener. Add the listener for the request. New class request listener. Request listener. Here import Java X dot servlet, import Java X dot servlet dot annotation. Here implements from request listener. Request listener. I must write servlet, no. Servlet request listener. This servlet request listener will have two methods. One point you have to understand now. Look here. In this diagram, one point. It will come to login servlet through input.html. Control will come to login servlet. A request object created will have username and password. Whenever I add one listener here, it says that request initialized, it says. Now, when it comes a response, this login servlet will give the response. The response may be invalid login process or welcome user Venkat. The response may come. When the response comes now, whatever the servlet related objects will be destroyed. Servlet object will be destroyed, config, request, response, print writer, all are destroyed. Understood the statement, all of you? Okay. Now here, part of login servlet, one session object is created. They're only in the logic that only one session object, blue color, added with the user bean is added. Okay, right. Now, when the request object created, means after request object created only, session object created. After request object destroyed, control will come to next servlet. Session object will not be destroyed until we log out. Okay, right. Now I am adding the listener for session. Sorry, listener for request first. So here two methods are there for request. So add this two methods. Add these two methods. Here, I'm putting a message. Request object initialized. Request object destroyed. Request object initialized. Request object not web. Okay. Web listener. Web listener. So this is when this request object comes. Now here session object is created. For the session object, I am going with session listener. I am going. So HTTP session listener. Spelling here. Session created, session destroyed. Okay, right. So now I am going with session listener. I am adding the listener for session. session listener. Implements from HTTP session listener. Import Java X dot servlet dot HTTP. Import Java X dot servlet annotation at the rate of web listener. Now here two methods are there for us. Session created, session destroyed. You can say session created. You can say session destroyed. You can say. Right. Now look here. So we are adding some attribute. No, adding one attribute for your sessions. You are adding one attribute. Do you remember? Attribute means what now? One variable. You are adding them, you are getting them, you are destroying them. Okay, right. For attribute related, we had one extra listener, that only attribute listener indirectly. But we say HTTP session attribute listener. Now, anyway, we are adding attributes to session now here. In your diagram, here we are adding attribute. Right. In our programs also, in the login servlet, we are adding attribute. Here. Set attribute, adding attribute. Logout servlet. Where actually we must remove the attribute here. Actually, we must remove the attribute. Here. HS dot removing the attribute. Why I'm using that means here three methods are there now for us. Attribute added, attribute removed. Of course, if you want to change in the middle, you can change it. Attribute replaced. If any new attribute named added with the same name with new value, it will say attribute replaced also. Now I am using these two methods in the program for output. For this, session listener here, session listener implements HTTP session attribute listener. I am implementing from attribute listener. Okay. Correct. These two are enough. Attribute added to session. Attribute removed from session. Now these are all listener methods. Just I'm putting only messages, but in the applicative area, we'll write the logics, what we have to do. Recording something, registering something, we store it and keep it. Here they are running or not, a demo purpose, we are keeping the messages and running. Okay, right. Now see that I'm running them. Now see the output. You know the flow. This is the flow. Right. Right click on this application session. Run as, run on server. Click on finish. See there, while application deploying only, context instantiated. Message you can see. Object, servlet, context object initialized. You can see in the console. While application loaded only, it is initialized. Observe this point and yes or no, na? Right. There is a proof to say that. Context initialized. Then the control came here now. I am putting nit.v MZU672. Click on login. Whenever I click on login now, control will come to login servlet. When the control came to login servlet, request is created. Understood now, right? Request is created. So answer will be request object initialized. After that, session object initialized means session created. After that, response will come out. Right. So response will come out. And the response comes now, request destroyed, session not destroyed. Request object initialized. Can you see? Okay, right. Session object created. Okay, right. Attribute added. Understood now? Of course, I am printing the hash code there. Okay, right. After that, you're coming as a response means the request object destroyed or not now, right? Actually, your nodes is, my nodes is important only. Because we written that nodes with small experience, many observations we done. That flows we recorded. Roughly I not written the nodes. The flow is there in the nodes when the object comes. Our experience will come into the nodes actually. That experience of observations we written. So that only flow because I not written life cycle. Servlet life cycle I not written the nodes. The reason now you're understanding. Request object means which object is coming, which object destroying, which object not destroyed means session object not destroyed. Understood? This output came now here. Output came, response came or not now? What is the response now? This response is coming now, right? So if I say view profile, if I say, now the control will go to view profile. View profile separate object now, separate program now, right? View profile will be loaded. View profile request will be created. Right? Okay. See there. If I click on view profile here, sir, that request object created, that request object will be destroyed. See there. Here request object initialized. Second object no. Means view profile servlet request separate again. Understood now? Right. But session object same only because I written the hash code there. Session object not only. It is not destroyed. Now this request belongs to view profile destroyed because came out as an output now. View profile came already. Now I am clicking on edit profile. Edit profile also one request is there, no separate request. Where is that? I given logout or what? Edit profile not there. Unless terminated or what? Right, I'll run it again. NIT.V MZU672. Click on login. Run as, run on server. Click on finish. I'm starting the server. Right. NIT.V MZU672. Request object initialized, session created, attribute added to session, login servlet, request object destroyed. View profile. Again, request object initialized, request object destroyed. Can I click on logout now? So logout, what happened now? Sir, logout means request initialized first, session object attribute removed. First remove the attribute, no? Remove the attribute, destroy the session, request destroyed. Request initialized, attribute removed, session destroyed, object destroyed or not now? Sir, where is this destroyed? Lastly, it should be destroyed or not now in the application. So you cannot see that destroyed. Why, sir? Means still the application is attached to your Eclipse. So it is not. If you run from original web browser, you can see that normally. Okay, right. Hope you understood listener point first. So listeners means one component running background to servlet objects. They are running background to servlet objects. In that listeners, we can have a logic, secured logic, which can be recorded about the users. That's the logic we are going to record it in the real time. For now, only listeners I added to you. Listeners. Right. The listener program, what is available to you. Application to demonstrate listeners here. Update HTTP session application with following listeners. Who typed that listener application? For that same listener application, add these three programs and run it. You get the answer. Okay, right. We done the assignment and edit profile. Completed. Very good. So add these three programs to that HTTP session and run it. Your program will be running. Listener. So they'll ask one question to you. How many listeners are there? Make it types of listeners in servlet programming. This is one FAQ. Types of listeners in servlet programming. Listeners in servlet programming are categorized into three types: application level listener, request level listener, session level listener. So application level listener means adding the listener to the context indirectly. Adding the listener to the context. This one. You added one listener to the context. This one. Context listener. Because context will be there until the application ends. So the process of adding listener to the servlet context object is known as application level listener. Request level listener. The process of adding listener to the servlet request object is known as request level listener. The process of adding listener to the servlet request object is known as request level listener. Session level listener. Anyway, the process of adding listener to the HTTP session object is known as session level listener. Like these three types of listeners: application level listener, request level listener, and session level listener, if anybody asked. So majorly servlet and filter and listener. This is for three are having annotations, no? Right. What is the annotation for servlet now? At the rate of web servlet. Here, at the rate of web filter. This one, at the rate of web listener. Here, XML related information also available here. Here, servlet mapping, filter mapping. Here also we have a tag. Here also we have a tag. The structure of web.xml from servlet programming. See there? It is ending point. So in the web.xml, you can write context PRM. Do you remember the tag? And context PRM. Using context PRM, we can add some initialization parameters to servlet context. Now, listeners, you can take it. There is a listener tag. Listener. Inside that, you must write listener class, means test.listener. You must write it. Now, remaining, normally, servlet tag is there. Servlet mapping tag is there. Filter tag is there. Filter mapping tag is there. Welcome file. So this is the complete structure of web.xml. The name is same only in servlet coding, only web.xml, and these are the some important tags related to web.xml. So theory. Right. So there will be some annotations. Many annotations will be there normally. So remember only 3 annotations, especially from advanced generally. So they'll ask one question to you. Define annotation. If not, the siding is annotations in servlet programming. There is define annotation. They'll say define annotation. They'll say. The tag based information which is added to the programming components. Programming component like class, interface, method, and variable. You can add for the class, you can add for the interface, you can add for the method, you can add for the variable, is known as annotation. Somewhere I written the definition, I think. I cannot remember. These annotations are represented using @ of symbol. These annotations are represented using @ of symbol. These annotations will specify the information to the compiler at compilation stage or execution controls at execution stage. They'll give the informations to the compiler. I'll give the informations to execution stage. Information to the compiler or information to the execution stage. Right. So tag based information means what? Look here. I said, I think when you go to any shopping malls and any lifestyle central, I think if you go there, they'll hang some dress there and they'll give one tag to it. That's called tag based information about that dress. Understood this point now, right? By seeing that, we can understand what it is. Price or any other information, size or something. Some information is there. Same. Annotation means one small information about our component, about variable, about method, about not block, sorry, about method, about class, and so on. That's called tag based information. How can you add that information? Means @ of a symbol. That's the meaning actually. Sir, if I add that information, who is going to read it? Some annotations will give information to compiler. Some annotations will give information to execution control. Our annotations will give information to execution controls. Advanced Java. This is core Java. @ of override. @ of suppress warning. Core Java. They will give information to compiler. That's the meaning. @ of override means generally we add for the method actually. And we ask the compiler to check my method is overriding method or not. We are asking. We are asking our compiler to check my method is overriding or not. So actually overriding is a process happens at execution stage, not in the compilation stage. So because of this reason, many materials will write method of overriding is an example of runtime polymorphism or execution time polymorphism or dynamic polymorphism. They'll say means it happens at execution stage. In the compilation stage, overriding your compiler cannot see. That's the meaning. But developer want compiler to check whether the method is overridden or not. In that process, we had a choice of adding information to the compiler to check my method only at the rate of override. Understood, right? So there are many warnings will come. Daily you are getting one yellow mark. No, there are all warnings. So generally what happened is in the process of coding, in the process of constructions, developers have flexibility to write and go. In that process, no need to code complete structure. No need to use complete syntaxes. Even then some answers will come. Example, if we take your collection framework, generally, in the library, stack will be like this. Generic type. Without this also you can create object. Stack OB is equal to new stack. Error will not come, but warning will come. That warning is nothing but why you are using raw type. Raw type means why you are not using generic means I'll use the second one. Suppress warnings raw type. Suppress means close. English meaning is close. So I can give information to compiler, close the warning and the type I'm giving there. Close the warning raw type. Close the warning unchecked. Close the warning some other serial and so on, right? Okay, that's called second one. Generally we use in core Java, that annotations we use in core Java. From exception handling chapter onwards we use it. And related to servlet programming, three things you have to remember it. One extra one I added, generally in the notes purpose and reading purpose. Practically you are doing three, no, right? One technique will be there in the interview to you. Define annotation, you have to answer it, right? What is the advantage of annotation? Means I'll give the information to compiler or execution control. What type of information? Means don't touch all. Touch at the rate of override, because you can explain very clearly. So what you know, you explain that. Don't show total knowledge in a single question. They'll catch it. Speak less and efficient. Don't give idea to the opposite person. Saying something extra and he'll drag you there, right? Okay, short information. What is the advantage? Means simply I can, through annotation, I can give information to compiler or execution control. What type of information? Yes. Then you can say right on the paper at the rate of override is one example annotation. So if I want compiler to check my method is overriding or not, I'll add at the rate of override. So you'll understand. You had a clarity about annotation. So how many annotations you know? Then you can say practically in Servlet program, I used 3. Understood it? Remaining I not yet used. I used 3, you say, and answer that 3. Do you know other than 3 means, sorry, I cannot remember, but I used this 3. Always in my program, you say. Enough. There you have to close it. Why means annotations are very important in Hibernate, Spring and web service, not in Advanced Java. Understood? In Advanced Java not needed, but I am educated few annotations and came for interview. Got it right? Advanced Java they are not needed. Web.xml is there now for us. So, but when you go for Hibernate, Spring and web service framework, you must write many annotations, you must list it. 20 to 23 annotations you have to add it. In each sector, 20 to 25 annotations, you must write the list and you must add them for interview. Here not needed. If you don't answer annotation also, they will not give a negative mark, because annotation not there also web.xml now. Simply you can say in my training process, I practiced web.xml. I not used annotation, you can say. If you say you've practiced web, you must know the tags. Servlet to servlet mapping, they'll ask it. So whatever you touch it, among that 80% grip must be there. 100%, nobody is 100%. Your distinction also 70% only, not 100%. Your graduation distinction. Company eligibility also 60% only, 40% not needed. Your subject 40% not there also, they will take it. Yes or no? Na? Below 50%, below 60%, company will think it. Company will put a question mark and think it. So 60% here also same. When you are giving a clarity, what you know, you answer up to 80% is enough. So are all questions I must answer, don't think it. So this is a way of putting one circle for your question very clearly, confidently, you must speak it about it. In annotations, you write 3, you speak it. If anybody asks the fourth one, I add. What is the fourth one? That one, web, INIT, PRM. Because one interview question is there, I added. Okay, right. Web servlet, you know, see there. This at the rate of web servlet is declared to the servlet program and used for identifying servlet program in execution process. At the rate of web filter is declared to filter program and used for identifying filter program in execution process. At the rate of web listener, this at the rate of web listener is declared to the listener program and used for identifying listener program in execution process. These 3 you know already, practically you are doing anyway. Sir, third one practical we not used. Why they will ask this question to you means, generally INIT PRM tag is there, web.xml. In web.xml, INIT PRM tag is there. Through that INIT PRM tag, we are going to initialize the parameters. Then they'll ask a question. If I want to initialize the parameters through annotation, is it possible? Then you must say at the rate of web INIT parameter annotation is there for me. So where you will use it? In my practical, I not used the answer because some other way is there in the web service. It is outdated format. So if anybody asks, I know the tag in the, how you know without using means I by-headed and came, you say nothing because 90% by-heading only. Every market knows. Yesterday I work with 10 projects, who will believe on it? Yes or no now, right? Some point when you are answering the answer, suppose I read it in Ken, so I given that my notes is I read it, but I not yet used practically. Exactly. Why you not use practically? I'm planning to enhance myself for the next level. I'm planning to enhance myself for the next level. So I'm on the process. So if you get a job, how will enhance it? Means Saturday, Sunday, because I will not stop my process. Interview means 3 things. And 1, standing on the subject or not. The subject, what you catched, you're standing on it, right? And showing the capability to the opposite person. I'm constructing the answer. I'm not presenting the answer. Constructing the answer means I used somewhere, I used in this format. From there, you're constructing the answer and saying that point you have to highlight it. Presenting answer means yesterday night I by-heard it. The same thing I'm presenting. We can say very easily. If you speak to me half an hour also, I can say. Easily that people will catch it. Third one is I am a learner. Somewhere you have to prove it. I am a learner. That you have to prove it. These only things happened in your interview. They'll point out it. Of course, many people speak to you. They had more experiences than me. But actual software engineer has to show I am a learner. Today I don't know also, tomorrow I can learn it. That's the confidence you have to give it for the industry. Understood this point? Because who comes out of your graduation? Nobody remembers. Nothing can be remembered. In the 3 months, you'll learn many things. If you give a choice for 2 hours, 2 years, I will learn many things. That is the confidence you have to show it. Happens or not happens. If any real-time project, if you run for 2 years, automatically confidence levels will be very low. These points you have to catch it. Presentation questions also must be very, very, very clear. So web INIT PRM we never use in advanced. Understood that point? These are the annotations. When we use annotations in Servlet program, the Servlet programs can be executed without depending on web.xml file. Yes or no? Right. So web. Anyone know? Right. You have to take the support of annotation or you have to take the support of web.xml. They'll ask this question also. Can we execute Servlet program without web.xml? Question is there. Answer is yes. I can execute. Using annotations, I can execute. All the annotations are available from which package now? Java x.servlet.annotation package. So these are the points for today. Okay, right. So I'll add these notes, read once. Tomorrow's concept, 15 minutes Servlet collaboration and 15-20 minutes your Servlet life cycle and entering into JSP. That's the plan. Okay, right. JSP will be more easy anyway because JSP predefined nodes will be there. All tags will be there. So tomorrow I'll attach the total nodes to you on one day. That nodes, we are writing the programs one by one for 2 days. So tomorrow, Wednesday, I think. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that all tags will be completed. After that, one MVC project, we type it for 2 days. Maybe Saturday, Monday. With that, your JSP will be ended. It's a plan. Okay, right. Right. Take a break for today. I'll add the notes to you. So thank you very much for today. So today I'm comfortable. Tomorrow I can come a bit early.